Hi, everybody.
So I just want to say thank you, first of all, for doing this. It's an honor to actually get a chance to, video chat with you. So thank you.
Of course. You're welcome. My pleasure. My pleasure. Finally, these are all the main players from
Yes.
both of the Facebook pages. It's so great to see everybody.
And actually two
It's
different
good to see
Goldberg groups as
you.
well.
Yeah, and two Goldberg's groups. So you span everything. So I gotta keep working to keep your groups active.
Yeah.
Well, can't
So,
forget about fanboys either.
And fanboys. Yes.
so
Yes.
first of all, I'm supposed to tell you that Johnny Atkins says hello.
Oh yes, I saw that on Facebook. I miss his ponytail.
He cut it off?
I don't I sure hope not.
No, I don't think he did. He's still
I
got
don't
long
think
hair.
so.
He's doing
No,
fine.
I don't miss his ponytail. I miss him with his ponytail. So just, yeah, he'll once you've engaged in the ponytail, you can it never can go away. So hopefully he still has it.
Yep.
So I have to ask, what was it like when that phone rang with that Emmy nomination?
That we're talking about the Muppets, and that was a complete and utter surprise because we'd been canceled. So voters tend not to vote for canceled shows, let alone to win. So like we had all those, I think we had like 5 or 6 nominations, and Jeff, Bill, and I, who we all created the show together, we just wanted one win, even if it was for anything. And then that night we just sat there watching. The big award of the night was Best Family Show, so we were last, and we just watched as we lost. We got swept in every event. We kept losing, and by the end we were so bummed at the end of the night. And they sat us in the last row of the theater as well. So we were like, "Oh,
This isn't a good sign.
this is not a good sign." So by the end, we were kind of all really dour and just kind of sitting there bummed, trying to make jokes, saying it's just an honor to be nominated. So when they did call us as best show, truly, we were floored. Like I've never been so convinced of anything in my life that we were just there, which was just, it was nice that we got recognized that we did good work, but then to win an Emmy, that was insane.
Well, it was certainly very well deserved. So
Thank you.
congratulations on behalf of us.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Well, it's
Thank
not the
you.
first Emmy you won.
No, that's the first award show I've been invited to.
Actually, I was
really?
talking about the one your mom gave you when you were young.
That is true. No, that was an Oscar. That was an Oscar.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I still have that here. Actually, I gave it to the show as like, use this as the prop, my actual Oscar that I got during my bar mitzvah, and the show broke it. So they came to me and they were like, "We have horrible news." Like look, the thing was like almost 30 years old, so they broke it, and I was like, "I really don't care." So they gave me the one that they used on the show as the replacement, which is just as fine. But yes, you are correct. That is the first award I ever got when I was 13.
Now, I had heard that a lot of the toys that were in Sean's bedroom were actually yours. Is that?
That is totally true. Jem, who was our prop master, who ended up becoming the set designer in the later years, I believe, after I was gone, he slowly started replacing them because he didn't want people to steal them or to get broken. So as the time went on, they would replace some random robot that I had with like just a one he would grab on eBay. But I would also see a lot of toys I always wanted and would like write that into the show just so he would have to buy it. And then my hope would be somehow it would end up in my hands, but it never did. So
Really?
Like the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier.
I know. That was Chad's, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's really good, Wayne. Yes. Chad see, we would kind of divide and conquer because
I understand totally.
So he covered GI Joe, I covered Transformers, and he had the aircraft carrier. He had, he had some really cool GI Joe stuff, and we made tons and tons of home movies with just our toys.
Yeah, from I saw some major pieces. Me and you are 3 months apart, buddy. Yeah, and we grew up in the same time. Look, you want to see something disturbing?
Yeah. Sure. There's your collection.
Oh my.
See. Wow, it's looking pretty good. We got to get some acrylic cases. I see Hot Rod. I see what's that big combiner right there?
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
This is one we didn't get because we got season 3. Those are the train bots from Japan.
Nice. They just released I saw they just released a train bot that got very poor reviews, which was disappointing.
Oh yes, that was the masterpiece one that Hasbro did.
Yeah. Yep.
Terrible reviews. This one is it's called the Moon Studios version.
We won't bore everybody with our Transformers.
Yeah, of course.
But,
Of course not.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Have you ever thought, Adam, about putting some of the home movies up on YouTube?
Yeah, Chad and I did discuss it. And yeah, we've talked about it. It just takes effort. And like, I don't love it's a pain going through them all. And I don't know, like, for what? You know what I mean? I'd rather kind of keep them and maybe I don't know, do a documentary or something down the line.
Right.
So not just kind of dump them out there into the world. But you know, after I left, the showrunners, you know, felt like I was running out of videos, which was not the case. I believe the best videos I have, I never even showed. A lot of them are just like my family arguing, which was embarrassing to them. But I would always, you know, I kept a lot of the best ones. I mean, there's probably another 300 hours of tapes that I have.
Oh, wow.
So,
wow.
So yeah, so like I had a lot. It was really hard after I left in the beginning when I was still involved. Like they would just kind of write an episode of whatever they wanted. And that was hard to match up a video to something that like, they would be like, you know, just some, do you have,
because it was something that didn't happen in real life.
Yeah. Like, do you have your dad trapped in an airplane toilet? And I'd be like, what? No, I don't, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
oh
like
yeah, hold on, let me go get that.
Yeah,
one.
exactly. So that was kind of like that was tough. And then to hear like, well, you're running out of videos. It's like, well, you don't know what I like. It's just it's
you
not
need to
gonna
write
work.
based on
Right. So you know,
no, you're doing it backwards. I'll give you the video. You write the episode around it.
Right. Yeah. So that's probably would have been much better. But I never even did that. You know, when I was doing the show for like the 6.5 years, I never fully, only a really small number of times would I build a whole episode around a video. Like one that came to mind was Pops during my bar mitzvah just took the microphone and gave this really kind of rambling, bizarre, sad, funny speech that I knew we had, and we would watch it in my family when we'd all get together and just kind of watch it and just laugh because it's just so inappropriate. So like, you know, that was one where I'm like, I showed it to the writers and I'm like, is this too like sad and bizarre? And they were like, no, we have to figure out how to have George Siegel do this exact speech. So like, that was one example of like me really crafting something.
It was perfect.
One of the things that I really liked that you guys did, speaking of George, was to basically write in that whole lion tamer act. Because I mean, like he did do that lion taming, you know, video back, you know, whenever that was shot, and to write that into the show, I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember how that came about. I think he had mentioned it that he trained some lions on like a early reality type show. So we found the clip on YouTube, and yeah, I mean, look, like. It's one of those weird things because like George Siegel in that world played my grandfather, he's not George Siegel, you know what I mean? Of like, just shoot me. So it was always a weird kind of thing where they can't go to a George Siegel movie because that's Pops. So that was like a really kind of, I think, late in the season decision to do that when we're kind of running out of steam and we're like, oh, we could build a whole thing around this lion taming thing. It'll be interesting. Whereas like season 1, I probably would have never have done that.
Right.
Because it didn't happen. Yeah. But that was, yeah, I mean, God, he was just the best, the most fun. And just, you know, he would call me, and there was one time where he called and he was like, you know, I really need to talk to you. It was almost seemed like it was an emergency. And I was like, oh no. So I drop everything. I think I went down to his trailer because it seemed so important. And I go into his trailer and he's sitting there and he's like, I've been thinking, what's really funny is if we did something like Who's on First. Do you know this Who's on First? It's a famous comedy routine. And I'm like, no, I've heard of it. It's pretty famous. And he's like, yeah, let's do something like that with like Pops and Barry and to get the word confused or something. So
and the whole JTP.
that was his emergency, was that he was just kind of pitching me ideas and something he really wanted to do and wanted to see on the show. So I went back to the writer's room and we came up with, I think, one of the funniest things we did, which was we literally did Who's on First, where the JTP goes, like you said, and they all are holding up the signs. That all came from George just bringing me down to his trailer and saying, Who's on First is a funny routine. Let's do something
no
like
one could get it.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah.
That's
so that
great.
all, so yeah, that was, yeah, I miss George. He's the best. I still keep all of his texts and emails. And yeah, he was, you know, much like on the show, I said, I don't really know or like anything before 1975 in terms of movies and television. If there's something that there's only a handful of things before the 75 where it's a movie or TV show that I love. So he was constantly like, here's an old movie you have to check out, you know, because he knew, and especially in music, Jeff Garland was always sending me like The Clash and like all of this cool 80s music. Yeah. And I, you know, my 80s music was from summer camp where it was like, you know, Bryan Adams or something.
Okay, so being Canadian, I have to ask, what's the deal with Rush? Because Johnny, like, I mean, the actual, you know, John is a deadhead. He wasn't a Rush fan.
Well, they were all deadheads in reality. Gary, Drew.
Not very home appropriate.
Johnny Atkins. And I believe, if memory serves, the network was like, that's not family friendly because there's a strong implication they're all stoners, which I mean, I agree. Like that comes hand in hand.
Of course.
And you know, that was a defining thing in the pilot, which was, well, if I make Barry, if I put him in a Deadhead t-shirt and he's talking about Deadhead, being a Deadhead, it is going to imply that he is a stoner, whether you want to or not. That's going to be the implication. So that's why I chose Rap, The Poetry of the Streets, Big Tasty. That was all me and Chad. That was our love, was like Public Enemy, Run DMC, Beastie Boys, Curtis Blow. I mean, so that was kind of just me at the time during the pilot. That was me
being careful.
Being careful. Had I known what the show was going to become, I would have made Barry and his friends deadheads because they were in real life, right? So so at the point in the pilot, in the pilot, you know, they weren't the Goldbergs, and there was a sister, and it wasn't until after we shot the pilot, which is what the show became, the Goldbergs, and it was like going to be more about my life than I had intended. So yeah, I think where the Rush thing comes from is, again, when I was introducing Johnny Atkins, look, Rush goes back to Fanboys, is like, you know, in that van they play Rush all the time, and
it's all Hutch had.
It's all he had was Rush. So that's, again, a big part of, like, you know, me growing up. It's funny, like, to Ernie Klein and I wrote the Fanboys movie. In his draft, it was Rush. I believed Rush was too narrow and nobody knew Rush. So I was like, should we change it to Journey or something like that, where like we could do Don't Stop Believing? Because at the time that was, you know, there wasn't Glee yet. I was like, oh, you know, that will be great for a movie. And then Ernie was like, we have to make it Rush. Like, he was insistent, and I'm like, I'm cool with Rush. I just don't know if there's that like fan base around Rush aside from that, aside from super fans. I didn't know if it translated to everyone. So in doing Goldbergs, I was like, I need to do another Rush homage because, you know, it went so well in Fanboys. So that's more of a Fanboys thing than a Johnny Atkins thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of Johnny Atkins, you did call me out on something.
Yes.
I found the year and you called me out on it straight up. And you said, how did you get that? Because that was not supposed to be coming out. Like the first episode, the pilot.
Right.
And I said, '83, and you were like, how did you know that?
Right.
And
How
I'm
did
like,
you know
oh
that?
my God, I have a Johnny Atkins. I felt
That's
so
amazing.
bad.
No, it's interesting. The year thing was a big battle with Sony at the time. They wanted it in '83. And they were really insistent. And I think we cut like a trailer or something and it said 1983 in it. And that somehow leaked onto YouTube.
I think that's how I got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
but I believe the compromise was in the pilot. I never said the date in the thing that aired. I
And I
just
think
said, right? I don't think
no, it didn't air. I
Right.
did get it off of somewhere I shouldn't. But
Right.
the one thing is oh, never mind. I'm sorry.
But no,
Finish
I mean,
your thought.
look, I couldn't set it in '83 because like
Well, yeah, I think that okay, what I was getting at was you had 3 older brothers that helped
Right.
you with the '80s a lot better because I had 3 younger brothers.
Right.
which
Yeah.
I had to pull through, and we were both born in the same year and the same
Yeah.
couple.
So my brothers are 7 and 9 years older than me. So
Yeah.
I definitely like knew more stuff than I would have at that age.
Exactly.
Because my
Like
brothers were so much older. But like I wanted to do like Power Glove season 1, and that's '89 or something. So like it never would have worked setting it in '83 because I wouldn't have had much to write about that I loved. Right. There was no Transformers yet. And I'm like, well, how am I going to do the Optimus Prime episode?
exactly.
So
And that was
it was just
yeah.
a weird kind of like creative way to just be able to do the stories that I wanted, because I only thought I'd only get 12 of them and then it'd be canceled. That's usually how television goes. So
Now, there's been a lot of people, comparing like the Goldbergs to the Wonder Years, and I know at one point you and I had talked, Adam. You had mentioned that Fred Savage was supposed to come on and do a guest bit.
yeah, yep, yep,
as a furniture store salesman, I think it was, right?
yep, yep, yeah. That's how Formica Mike was invented. Was originally, I'm trying to remember. I really wanted to do a Wonder Years crossover where you meet Kevin years later, but we weren't going to say it was Kevin.
Where he takes over the business for his dad because his dad was a furniture salesman. Okay.
Yeah, and so yeah, I mean, and Fred has directed Breaking In and Goldberg's episodes, so I convinced him to do it. And then once he read it, he was kind of like, and I get it. He was like, I feel like it was supposed to be a subtle reference. And once he was like, yes, I went like all in and like, I wanted to reunite the whole cast and the whole thing. And he was
him and Winnie should have ended up together anyways, right? So
right, totally. So yeah, I didn't want to put him in a bad position, and it's weird how these things work out because we got this character, Richard Kind, who was so great, friends with Jeff. They had such great chemistry together. I mean, that would have been just like a one-off episode where I'm just doing an homage to Wonder Years, and instead we got like a recurring character. Right. So it's interesting how those things work out for the best.
So that's switch.
That was just a script. Like, I don't think we never really shot anything, or it was just an idea, more or less.
Okay.
So
switching over to the Muppets for a minute. Now that you guys have actually won the Emmy, is there any chance on Disney changing their mind?
Well, I mean, the whole thing is interesting because like we wanted to do more, but we like capped it off like a limited series, and we never like expected it to be like, we wanted to do just other Muppet stuff. We like, there's so many characters, to do another season of that would have been amazing just because I love the actors and what we kind of built out. But, I wish we would have just said it was a limited series, because that's kind of what we were, I think initially it was a self-sustaining thing, but then Disney is like, well, if you say limited series, then people don't really like go to it as much because they feel like, oh, it's only this one little thing and they might not watch it. So I don't know. So the answer is it'll never come back in that form, but I don't think it should have anyway. Like I'd rather do Kermit or Gonzo. I mean, there's just so many characters, right?
Well, that's what we were thinking. Like, it's sort of like an introduction to the band of like the Letterman show. Like you got all these other characters that are, and we just got the introduction to the band, and the band would always open up for the Muppets.
So like, the Muppets it was definitely like great to cap it off with an Emmy for Best Family Show, like something I never expected. But the meetings I'm having now are like, what is the next thing, right? Like,
Because
and
at
I
one
even
point they
put it
wanted you to
up.
take over everything, right?
I would love to take over everything. I think they have, it's when something is owned by Disney, that's really hard. Um, because there's already a lot of people involved. I think if it were to be a takeover, Bill Beretta, who's the voice of Dr. Teeth and many other characters, it's less like of a me thing and more of an us thing because there's so many great people that have been doing it for so long. And it's why I loved the Muppet experience infinitely more than the Goldbergs. I think Muppets showed me just how miserable I was on the Goldbergs because it was so high pressure.
Right.
And like, if I wrote the wrong thing, someone would call and yell at me from my real life. So it was like, it was always, it was so, and everything had to be perfect and just, and I'm matching up with my home movies. It was just a lot. And to do that 22 or 24 episodes a year, it was like, it was something I would certainly never do again. So Muppets was just a group effort and, 10 episodes, we got to plot it out. And it was just fun. It was so joyful and it wasn't all me. I was just kind of helping facilitate this amazing thing that Jim Henson created years ago and working with people that still do it to make something that would be well received. So it's just so much of a better experience, and it's a group effort. It's never going to be like a me thing, like the Goldbergs or Schooled or something like that, or even like Breaking In, like all came from like my brain, whereas Muppets is like just me kind of being facilitator, working with the performers and the writers and just trying to get something great as a group, which I much prefer.
Is there anything?
Well,
Is
sorry.
there anything more Muppets to come from you? Like, are you planning any other Muppet?
I would say yes. For now,
Okay.
I would say yes. I mean, I put in years, 3 years into that show, and it's outside of the writing and creating the Mayhem show, just meeting the performers, getting to know them, like getting into that camp was like really hard. It's really kind of a tight-knit small group. It has been for years and years. So I put in that time. So it's just a matter of, what money can we get from Disney? And then what could we do with it?
One of our fans on our fan page has suggested like a Muppets, uh, g- essentially tour the world sort of thing. So I mean, like the Muppets in Canada, for instance, or the Muppets in Australia or the UK.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the it's owned by Disney. So the problem with the Muppets will be at the moment, it can really only live on Disney Plus.
Hmm.
And, then you're dealing with like more corporate opinions on like, they have plenty of Muppets. They have all the Muppet movies. They have the Muppet Show. So it's like, does the new Muppet material move the needle for them enough to warrant, that we got that the series we did was like $60 million series. It was really expensive.
Wow.
So it's like, if they were able to open it up outside of Disney, then we would have a lot of Muppet content because I know that Netflix would want Muppets. I know
Yeah.
other networks might want a Muppet special, but if it's at Disney, it's just really hard right
Disney's
now.
never going to let it go. They will
Correct.
never let it.
No, they'll never let it go, but also they feel like they're maxed out, I think, on Disney Plus with Muppets. So, then you're with this like big franchise that's kind of stuck. So that's what we're working on now is like, how do we get a little bit more unstuck? This show is a proof of concept. People liked it. It won some awards. It was certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. So I think concept wise, we showed that there's merit there and that people still like it. We just have to, I think, do something more universal this next time. Even if it's doing like the Muppet Show, like a new version of the Muppet Show or something. Like that would
I
be.
think that'd be perfect.
That was kind of what I was expecting when I first heard that you were planning on doing like a Muppet thing. I was expecting something like a reboot of the Muppet Show.
Yeah.
And I mean, like bringing back, that, cast. I mean, that one, human cast member, per week, and
I think I was afraid to do that out of the gate because there's such high expectations, and I can't really if you're doing a Muppet show that's like a variety show or more of an SNL, like a sketch show, and that's not my strength as much as like storytelling and making it feel like a little movie. So they're like two different kinds of things. So just out of the gate, I wanted to do something I was more comfortable with. And also, I didn't want to write about those main characters because I was still scared to write Kermit and Piggy. And like they tried on the last 2015 show, it didn't go well. People didn't like, I thought the show was good, but for whatever reason, it didn't work for people. So yeah, I thought this was a good sideway into the Muppets. Like everyone knows Dr. Teeth and Animal, and you know, there's not huge expectations. And to just show, like, look, they started Marvel with Iron Man. So,
Yeah,
you know,
did.
at that time, I don't really think anyone even knew Iron Man outside of comic book fans. So, yeah, so like, you know, they didn't do Captain America. I feel like people knew Captain America more than Iron Man. So yeah, that was kind of the thought process, whether it was the right thing or not. I mean, we read a lot of stuff. We're like, why do something about the band? Who cares? Hopefully those who watched it felt like we kind of fleshed out the characters and made it real fun, and just shows that all the characters are great. You could do a show about any of them. I'd do a Fozzie stand-up show. I mean, there's so much you could do. Swedish Chef and cooking. There's a lot of possibilities.
Speaker. Oh boy.
The Swedish Chef on the Food Network with his own cooking show.
Yeah.
No, him and Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah,
Oh,
him and
gosh.
Gordon Ramsay. That'd be amazing. So Bill, the guy that I created Mayhem with, is the Swedish Chef actually as well. And I'm trying to convince him that the Swedish Chef can sustain his own show. He feels like it's like a 3-minute bit, and that's where it lives best. And he knows better than I know, by the way. I'm sure they've tried more longer form with Swedish Chef, but he doesn't speak English. He speaks gibberish. And
it would be amazing though if they could do something like him having a different chef. You know, there's all these famous chefs now
that you so could,
and they would probably all jump at the chance to do it.
I totally
agree. That would be awesome.
I agree. And the best part of Swedish Chef is he has human hands. It's my favorite.
Yes.
That is the weirdest thing about him, in my opinion. And didn't you and Gary Ball do something similar to?
We did. Yeah. That is, you know the Goldbergs well, and you know my life.
Well, I think that's why Steve took me on, because I got all your Easter eggs.
Right.
I got all your phone numbers. I called them. I gave them all to everybody else.
I love that. Yeah, Gary Ball.
I saw Bria B in the Spencer's episode.
Yep. Long before she was a character.
Oh, yeah.
Gary Ball is now a fire chief, I believe, in Colorado. And we did a lot of Swedish Chef. Never as good. We didn't even have a puppet. But one of us would be hands, and the other would be the human. So we did
definitely relatable, and I could tell where it was coming from.
Now I did notice some. There were 2 members of the Goldbergs that appeared on the Muppets. Was that intentional?
It was Jenna Irwin,
Virginia,
right?
There was Virginia, and there was
Who else?
Oh yeah, there was Vic. No, Vic was in it.
Oh,
he played the cop.
Right, and there's one more. Ben Zelavansky, who plays the guy who is like what's the guy's?
John Calabasas?
No, not John Calabasas. Ben Zelavansky played Dale on the Goldbergs in many episodes, and Dale was like always. He was he's Jeff and I, who I created the Muppets with. Ben went to school with us at NYU and is one of the funniest guys ever. And on the Goldbergs, whenever I just needed like a line here or there, I called Ben. I'm like, I'm going to make you recurring on the show. So we always gave it to Dale. He was usually in the Goldberg store arguing with Murray. And then someone wrote an article about how Dale is the curse of the Goldbergs. When something goes wrong, Dale is always there, which I loved. So Ben Zelavansky he was in the writer's room in the Muppets. And when Lips wanted to change the world, Ben was leading the writer's room. So there were 3 Goldberg people, and that was just casting like actors that I just love, you know. So Jen Irwin, who's Virginia Kremp. The first job I ever had when I was in I think I was 23 or 24, was called Still Standing. It was a sitcom. It was my first job. And Jen played the young kooky sister on the show. She was one of the leads on the show. And I was a newbie writer. So I've known her since the start of my career. And I put her in everything. She was in Breaking In. She played Creepy Carol in The Office. Yeah, everything I do, I put Jen in. Yeah, she played Creepy Carol in Breaking In. And then Ben Zelavansky was also in Breaking In. So yeah, there's a couple people that I just love and I always put in everything just because I want to see them.
What about Uncle Marv?
Oh, Fogler, the best.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so grateful that Fogler did the Goldbergs, because Uncle Marv was just supposed to be a 1-episode thing. And when you cast someone like that, it's really hard scheduling. I mean, he was in all the Harry Potter movies, so there would be entire years where we couldn't use him.
I've seen him in so many things.
Speaking of Marv, when you did the Kit episode, did you reach out to William Daniels?
We didn't. I reached out to Nick, who was one of like the main first Gold nerds, who is really in that fandom of like the Knight Rider fandom, and he wrote like the definitive Knight Rider book. So I wanted it to all be legit, and Nick helped us get the car, but we never reached out to William Daniels, and we probably should have. But again, at that point in the show, like I was already stretching the truth to have Knight Rider on the show as it was, because Knight Rider was at the mall, and I think that's what the episode was about, right. But I never saw Knight Rider. So to have the Goldbergs end up in the car is already a huge stretch in my mind. Okay. And then to have Kit on top of it, I feel like at that point in the show, I still wanted it to be real. So I didn't go there yet. Whereas like, I think after I left, like Adam was like hanging out with David Hasselhoff.
Yeah.
You know.
That was later. Yeah.
Yeah.
In his
so,
NYC thing.
So it just, my favorite Goldberg season was actually season 5. Like I know people talk about 1 and 2, and then, but for me, 5 was like the pinnacle. And then 6 was uneven because I was doing school at the same time, and I think both suffered. But there's episodes in 6 which are, I think, the best of the whole series.
I agree there.
Highlander is my favorite. Highlander. And again, all true, right? Like I had a Highlander club at school, so to do that episode was so fun. And then the 8-bit Goldberg.
That's what I'm gonna say right there, 8-bit
yeah.
Goldberg.
So, and again, those are all like I dug up. A lot of the stuff I dig up after the fact and be like, I wish I had this for the episode. But I spent an entire summer at camp programming a game, and then found the game afterwards after the episode was done, and I was like, oh, this would have been so good. But yeah, so William Daniels, at that point, we weren't doing like those guest stars. You know what I mean? Like, and then as the show went on, you need ways to kind of something for them to promo. So you start to get desperate.
Whose idea was it to bring?
Oh, sorry, Steve.
Whose idea was it to bring Charlie Sheen in at the end of the Breakfast Club episode?
That episode, I think that episode was responsible for like the show becoming like transitioning from being something everyone made fun of and being like considered like the worst thing ever to like, oh, there's something different and special here. So the first year I did the Goonies episode, which was I took real seriously and took a lot of time. And then that
all the way to the tree.
Yeah. Yep. And then so Ferris Bueller, once like we committed to that, I mean, that episode was usually an episode was shot in 4 days, and we spread that one out over like a month. So we were just, it was so huge, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it got to the point where we were like, let's have Charlie Sheen, because he had just left. I think it was like the height of like all that crazy Charlie Sheen stuff with Tiger Blood and all like.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it was like right in there. And it was like, he had just, I think they just aired the finale of 2.5 Men. And normally Charlie wouldn't have done it, but because they killed him on the finale of 2.5 Men, I think they dropped a piano on his head or something.
Yes,
No,
they did. It was hilarious.
You know, he was like, screw them. I want to be on network television again. So like that, so he came and it was awesome. He read the script once and he did it perfectly. He's like such a pro. It's unbelievable. So that was like the first of like, we'll do 1 or 2 a year. That's just not a Goldberg's from my life, but just like a straight up homage because people would like them so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also I had all this home video of me reenacting Ferris Bueller because I was obsessed. So like I even would force my mom to like do it. I think at the end there's a clip of my mom doing like, it's over, go home.
Yeah.
You know, so I would even force my mom to like reenact Ferris Bueller with me. I was a weird kid.
What does your mom think of the popularity of the show?
I think she has her opinions. I think like when it was on, it was for her, it was exciting and painful because I would often take exact conversations and put them on TV and it would be really hurtful for her because she would be like, you know, you're making me look crazy. And then once I was gone, she had real kind of issues just in general that she was really vocal about just like I think the tone of the show being
the tone definitely changed after you left.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah.
While we're on the subject of your mom.
Yes.
I posted in my Goldberg's group asking people if they had questions for you.
Yes.
And I have 2 comments from your mom. She wants to know, why haven't you called your mother this week?
Sure. Fair enough. She's visiting this week, so I'm not going to call her. I'm going to see plenty of her. Yeah.
Come visit your mom where she lives instead of having her schlep all the way to California to you. I'm old, you know.
She's old. Yeah. That's again like why, I mean, just like people don't realize how hard it was and stressful it was. Like everyone around me saw it as a television show. You know, even like Doug Robinson, who was the main producer with me, he thought they were characters. And I thought they were real people. And like, and I looked at, a lot of what made it so hard was me just saying no all the time because it wasn't how it was in real life. And also the real people were going to call me and like have feelings about it.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's something you have to think about.
And like, if you think about it, like just conceptually, I'm then showing a video, like Barry in particular is real sensitive dude. And he doesn't want to be famous. He's
very private. Yeah.
Right. Private dude. He wants to like go to the Eagles games and like hang out with the JTP and just like, you know, do his thing. And he's like, it's not a TV show. You're presenting this as a documentary because you're showing footage. So if you do an episode, he's like, just for example, I get caught naked in the locker room and I get thrown into the hallway and everyone sees me naked, whatever, some embarrassing story. He's like, you'll literally show video at the end and be like, this is Barry.
Yeah.
And it's all real. So he's like, so you can't do that. It's not fair because then everyone thinks everything you're presenting is real because you're showing me at the end and I don't want to be shown. Right.
But so actually you and mix of Barry.
Right, exactly. But, you know, I am showing video of him at his worst, crying, screaming at me, yelling, whatever that home video would be at the end. So
running away the way he does.
The way he does.
That was great.
You know, so that was like really kind of after a while, it wore me down and made me miserable because you feel like, you know, and then I start bringing in my friends and my teachers. And like, you know, Mellor at one point got angry at me because we did a whole run about how he was a communist or sympathized with communists or something. And it was just a joke. But you're like, oh, you know, these people, they're watching it with their families and they go to school and people are like, are you really a communist? Like, so, you know, so it was really complicated. And again,
I think you did a good job with Schooled at the end of that with showing your real teachers and the way they really felt about that. I thought that was a good cap.
Yeah, but because I left, I mean, Schooled never the plan was for me to transition away from Goldberg's and run Schooled with the original showrunner. And then when, Disney stepped up and Sony didn't, like, once I was gone, there was really they didn't want it. I mean, understandably, I'm not there, so they don't know any of my teachers. So it really kind of was never, it would be like taking me out of the Goldbergs after season 1. Like, it just wouldn't have been the thing that it became. So I don't think Schooled really ever got a shot. And then when I did have to go back and run it, season 2, we went through 2 showrunners while I was at Disney, and then I came back just like because we had to get to 13. And we were shooting already. We were like airing, and there was no script. So I never had any prep time. So I was just trying to get stuff out just to air stuff. So it was all.
Schooled unfortunately never got the love I thought that it deserved.
Right. Well,
yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, and then, and then ultimately they have Abbott, right? Which obviously works for them. So I think I was onto something. Like, I saw a need for a show where teachers are a family. Like, that was the thing that people would say is like, it's never going to be the Goldbergs because teachers aren't a family like the Goldbergs. And I disagreed. And if you watch Abbott Elementary, they're like a family, right? So they kind of did in the best version what I wanted to do, but I just wasn't really there to get it done. So, it is what it is. You win some, you lose some. At the very least, I'm just happy we got 2 seasons because it didn't even get picked up initially. So, it was like the thing that I made, like that backdoor pilot, was so despised.
Really?
That was one of the worst nights ever. Because like Doug and I loved it, and we thought, oh, there's something really here, like Tim Meadows and his sister, and
no, it was great.
But people were so confused. They thought they were like, they didn't understand what was going on. There was no Murray. Like I put in Beverly. It was like marketplace confusion, as the other Adam Goldberg would say. Like, I think they thought I was changing the show. Yeah.
Is there really that much hatred between you and the other Adam?
That's a great question.
It's a great question. Here's what I'll say. I will go through the truth. There is, I was a huge Adam Goldberg fan.
Yeah, who wasn't?
Yeah.
What was the end?
Hebrew Hammer to me was like,
well, the Hebrew Hammer. I never actually saw that one. But I was thinking more like Dazed and Confused.
And like Dazed and Confused, and we had the same name.
Private Ryan.
Yeah,
he was great in that.
He's great.
And
we
his
had the
character on Friends was
his caddy on Friends. Like and we have the same name, so of course I'm like gonna be a fan.
Yeah, you're gonna cross.
And I was such a fan that I reached out to the director. There was like a charity event, and if you won, you got to meet the director of Hebrew Hammer. So when I'm like 27, I win this charity thing, and I get to meet John Kesselman, who wrote and directed Hebrew Hammer. And we became fast friends, right? So with John, I helped him with the sequel to Hebrew Hammer. So like, John had a script, and I helped him redo the script, and we got it in great shape. We like took it to like Kickstarter or something. So I was like, I was working on a project with Adam, and Adam knew I was working on it. And then when the Goldbergs came out, he slowly went insane. and I went at him really hard, and it's fine. We got in our fight. It was awesome. For me, I thought it was hilarious and awesome. But then from his point of view, I proceeded to troll him relentlessly on the next season of the show.
Yes, you did. A wonderful job.
So like, I think Adam would have been fine had I not like trolled him and made him put the whole Goldberg rivalry on the show, and then the Karate Kid thing. And in the Karate Kid thing, I'm like, no one cares about either of us. Like, so I really spoke to the whole thing, but he did not find it entertaining. He thought it was hurtful. And I think if he saw me, it would not be great. So he did request that I not be involved in Hebrew Hammer 2. And so yeah, I don't think he's a big fan of mine. I still think he's great. I mean,
hey, if you can't take a joke, hey.
He's definitely like, I will say this. He's like an artist. I mean, it's just like in the episode I did. He's an artist.
Yeah.
You know, and he makes indie movies. He's a photographer. So I think he's like takes his art very seriously. And I'm not that kind of guy. So I don't think he has a big sense of humor about it all. Whereas I think I find the whole thing kind of funny and silly.
Now, one of the things I do have to just mention, Adam, is that my grandfather actually had a fire engine red 1989 Chevy IROC. So when I saw that red Firebird show up in the Goldberg,
yeah, that was it. That was I wish I had video or photos of it, but Pops had that exact car, and that was like his pride and joy.
I thought it was a Trans Am.
It was I think it was a Trans Am with the Firebird with like the bird on the front. What would that be?
Trans Am.
Trans Am. Yeah, the IROC is similar, definitely. But yeah, that was Pops's actual car, and I loved driving in it as a kid. I thought it was the coolest thing ever, and that's a true story. He did drive into a. He got confused and thought a Wendy's drive-through was like the on-ramp to the freeway, and like demolished a drive-through, and that's in the pilot. And I remember a critic like at the TCAs was like, you know, they're just trying to get like headlines and clickbait. And I was like, this one critic was like, this is ageism. You're like showing that old people can't drive, and why would you do that? And I was like, well, that's like a story for my family. You talk about that story at Thanksgiving, and then the critic was like, oh, okay. Oh well. Yeah, true story.
I gotta tell you, Adam, one of my favorite episodes was Hooters.
Yeah.
And Clancy Brown, just, oh my God, he knocked it out of the park in that episode.
Yeah, I like wanted Clancy to be a cast member on Schooled. And what's really interesting and odd to me is that
I thought he was.
He wasn't a cast member, but I just kept hiring.
I saw him in the cafeteria a couple times, or in the break room, didn't I?
I mean, he was. So, like, anytime what's hard is you have like your cast members that get like paid every week, whether you use them or not, and then you have like the recurring weekly people, like the JTP. They were never cast members,
right?
So there comes a point where you're on so much that the agents start to ask for more money and more permanence. And then Sony goes, well, we can't afford that. And then they go away. Right. Yeah. So, but the network, someone at the network or studio thought Clancy Brown was not funny. They're like, he's not a comedian, you know? And I'm like, he's funny because he's not a comedian. And also he's on SpongeBob. Like, he's funny. And you know, of course, he's known as like the ultimate bad guy in every movie, but he's actually like amazing with a joke. I think one of the funniest things we did on the show was, I don't remember what episode, but it was about how he split his pants. We gave him this ridiculous monologue about split his pants. He said it was Donald ducking, and then he bent over and he farted. He farted as he bent over. I think it was like that. It was like
I couldn't stop laughing. Like it was it was like a Joker laugh that I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna like.
I loved, and I also only put him on the show because I knew eventually I'd do the Highlander episode.
Oh, so, not only that, like
you know, so I always had some weird plan that no one knew about, in my brain, and then like down the line they'd be like, oh, that's a great coincidence that like you did a Highlander episode and Clancy Brown happened to be on the show. And I was like, no. That's why I put him on the show, is I knew eventually.
Because you had the Highlander group.
Because I had the Highlander group. Yeah. I had a plan for Gutenberg as well. Because I loved having Steve Gutenberg was another teacher on the show. Might be the nicest man on the planet aside from Christian Slater. Those are my two favorite, like the nicest actors I've ever worked with. And then I left and I never got to execute my Gutenberg plan, but I think they did a Cocoon story or something.
How did getting Goldberg on the show come about, the wrestler?
That's a great question. Again, just if your last name is Goldberg and there's a wrestler named Goldberg, in like the late 90s, of course that I'm going to be a super fan of that guy.
Right.
And he was so the guy who is his, I guess, booking manager has ended up becoming a very, very, very close friend of mine, one of my best friends now. His name is Louis Gregory. And at the time, not to get too much into the weeds with Louis, but at the time he was kind of a booking agent for anytime I needed someone between the two shows. It was like, I need Vanilla Ice, I need Curtis Blow, I need Goldberg. I'd always go to the same guy who like would get these guys gigs. And so not an agent, not a manager, just like a booking kind of manager, and more dealing with them on a personal level. Oh, the Fat Boys. He was like, best friends with Prince Marky D. So he like grew up with a lot of these guys and was representing them. So Louis was running Goldberg's account, his Twitter account, and knew that Goldberg was angry that there was a show called The Goldbergs and was tweeting. And I saw, and I asked on Twitter, I'm like, would you be on the show? And then Louis reached out to me and he's like, dude, Goldberg would love to be on the show. And the thing that I learned about working with him is that pro wrestlers are great comedic actors. Like, if they're able to laugh at themselves, like, there's some that want to look cool and they won't go there. But you look at The Rock, John Cena, Goldberg, like these guys are in on the joke.
Oh yeah.
And like Goldberg could do, turning a joke is really hard, the timing, and he can crush it. So like he was such a welcome addition as Meller's younger brother. Like, I mean, and I got to work with him, which was amazing. And I got to like talk to him. And there was one moment where I was like in his trailer. I would just kind of go to his trailer and just like hang out and be weird and just ask him questions. And it was like when Trump was president, and there was some time where like people were going to Jewish cemeteries and knocking over like gravestones. That was like big national news, maybe 5-7 years ago. So he was in his trailer, he was watching the news, that was on, and I'm like, so why Goldberg? Like, why did you do that? Like, it's crazy to me, like
have a stage name.
Like, yeah, like the thing with Jewish entertainers is you go away from the name, right? That was like the best Uncle Marvin joke was his stage name was Mordecai Fishman, because when they zig, I zag. Most people go away from it, but he went like more towards it.
Gold.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So Goldberg pointed to the TV that was playing this news thing where there was like anti-Semitism like on the rise. And he goes, that's why I did it, because I knew I was in these southern states. No one had ever seen a Jewish person, met a Jewish person. And he was like, I did it because I just wanted to show that, I'm Jewish. Like, so that's why he did it. But he said initially he had some other name. And then he eventually kind of was like, nah, I'm just going to be Goldberg. So, and that's why he's so great, because his name is Goldberg.
Awesome.
So, Adam Sandler was your production company. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yes.
Was there any talk of having Adam do any kind of a cameo role on the show? Or?
There was always talk. And, there was a moment. So like there was a moment where Adam had done Brooklyn Nine-Nine opposite us.
Right? I know you guys did The Wedding Singer at one point too, right?
Right. Yes.
So was there talk of having him come in there?
That's where he kind of stepped up. But, Doug, who I created the Goldbergs with, ran Adam's television side and Adam I don't know that Adam he still doesn't. He doesn't really want to be a television mogul. He wants to make movies and have fun, which is like amazing. He could do that. So it was always very separate. And I don't think Adam had even really seen the show until his kids started watching it, because he had at the time like middle school kids.
Okay.
And then I started getting calls from him like, wow, this is great. But I think he's like, I mean, why is he going to watch the Goldbergs? He's making like movies with Jennifer Aniston and all his friends, and he's in Africa and traveling the world and doing stand-up and loving his life, and he's with his family. Like, he's not going to sit down and watch an episode of the Goldbergs. So I don't think the show was really on his radar initially. I think he was happy for Doug. And he was happy. I mean, he was making money off of it,
Right.
but he wasn't part of it. I wanted Adam to be working with Adam was one of my dreams because like one of those random coincidences where Pops had a place in Florida. We'd go every spring break, every winter break. Adam Sandler's grandparents were in the same building.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
When I
wow.
was, when I was like, 14 and 15 and writing plays and little movies and filming stuff with my video camera, Adam would be there, like at the pool. And he and Barry were friendly and they'd play basketball all day long. And they even hung in New York a little bit when Barry was in med school. So Sandler was like, oh, I know. He was like the first Hollywood person I ever met. Like he was just on SNL. And it's like, wait, that guy at the pool's on SNL. So I would give Sandler my plays and he would like read them at the pool and be like, oh, buddy, this is great. You should write a movie. And like, I didn't even know what that was at the time. I just knew I could write a play and have my friends perform it at school. So when I moved to LA, one of my goals was like to go full circle and be like, remember my family? Remember me? So that's when I met Doug. I was like, I just want to work with Adam in any way. So it was kind of like a full circle, like I want to work with this guy was so nice to me when I was like a kid and like encouraging. And I'd see him like, and I'd always look forward to seeing him. And I remember having a conversation. He just shot Billy Madison and was telling me and Barry about how he was like hitting little kids with dodgeballs. Like we were just super fans because our grandparents knew each other. It's just amazing. So that's why Sandler was his company, because I wanted to go and be in his orbit in any way. And I think for Doug, it became a little like stressful that Adam hadn't been on our show yet. He was on Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He was on let's see, Kevin, everybody, what's that? The guy who's Mall Cop, Paul Blart. He had a show. Yeah, Kevin James had a new sitcom.
Oh yeah,
wait, it was
Kevin
something
Can
about
Wait.
Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, Kevin Can Wait. Like, so Sandler was on that show. Like, he was on every other comedy but the Goldbergs, and then Adam really stepped up. I called him and I was like, I want to set the Goldbergs in the same universe as your movie, as Wedding Singer. And that required Adam to call and say, this is something I want, and please give us
my God, I remember
all the movie.
that.
Like, it wasn't just movie footage. We were incorporating our characters into the Wedding Singer.
Yeah.
Right.
That was amazing. I remember that on the plane.
I mean, getting John Lovitz to come back and reprise his role was
Yeah. So we're like essentially doing a little sequel to The Wedding Singer. And that was all because Adam called and was like, I want this to happen. And we had his blessing. So he did step up. And I would prefer that. Right. I thought that was a great way to get Barry.
That was awesome. You did a great job with that.
Yeah, I prefer that than having him be like the car salesman, But I wanted him to be Uncle Marvin initially. And that would have been foolish because Sandler would have done it once and been busy and never done it again, and then I can't use Uncle Marvin. So but yeah, so Sandler really did step up, and then once his daughters found the show, he was like always calling, and he would just call and be like, I love that episode, and how are you doing, and do you have a movie for me? Like, so I mean, he's the best. He's the best.
I want to say something about the ending of every Goldberg's episode. That after I'm the historian.
Right.
After the episode where Pops had the gambling problem,
yes,
the end of that, every episode had him laughing at the very end.
Yep. That
was amazing, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, that
really appreciate all your little nuances that you put into these things. It shows a lot of heart.
Real Pops did have quite a gambling problem, so that was a very personal, kind of fun episode to do. And then he made that one sound. You
can never forget it now.
And I don't remember how it kind of came to be, but like we just kept playing it over and over in the editing room. And then I had discovered simultaneously that my car didn't have a sound like that for whatever reason. And I'm like, so I used that sound just once for that episode, and I liked it so much I kept it.
Oh,
And then I wanted to keep it
after
for
he
the
died, it
Muppets.
was just every time you heard it, it was like,
Yeah. Oh, so
oh,
good. I wanted to keep it for the Muppets, but I was afraid that like Sony would like come and sue me for like owning the sound or something, so I never used it. But
yeah.
it was the plan to stick with every show I had after that would have the George sound.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it's like remember Sit Ubu Sit? Sit Ubu Sit.
Yeah.
Yep. Sit,
Yeah.
Ubu,
Good
sit.
dog.
Good dog.
Good dog. Woof. So that was my version of that. Oh man. Yeah. I mean I know the actors like right away were like, we'll do a reboot. Like, I mean it was a bummer to like be so far outside of it that last season and watching kind of the show go out with such a whimper. Like there was
Especially
no
having to watch your dad die again.
that was tough.
Dude,
And
why
I
would they
begged
do
them
that
not
to
to
you?
do it. Definitely begged them not to
They
do
didn't
it.
even have to do that. That was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, they made their creative choices. I mean, people don't fully remember this, but I had actually given the Murray character cancer, melanoma, which
Well,
is
I
what
thought that he
passed
had his
away
first
from.
heart attack in the first episode.
Right. Yes. I mean, it was such a thing with my dad was like perpetually always in horrible health and did not take care of himself, which is like such a
Ironically, he
Murray
was a doctor, though.
and ironically was a doctor, which made it even funnier to me. But you know, there was I think in episode season 6, he got like a bad thing back from the dermatologist.
Yeah, I
So
remember that. Yeah.
I was going, that was always kind of like in my mind. I was always going to go, not kill the character, but I thought, you know, my dad became very different once he found out that his time was limited. And I thought it was great for the character. All of a sudden, my dad wanted to be involved, and I'm like grown up, and I'm like, I don't want you to be involved now. So I thought it was really interesting. But the new team didn't want to kind of keep that going. And I think had they done something like that, it would have at least felt a little warranted.
A lot of
Because it had been
times
teased
in
out.
the show, it kind of depicted Murray like he just, I don't know, he wasn't very doctor like.
Right. Well, the reason the doctor thing didn't happen, again, when I did the pilot, they weren't the Goldbergs. So I was okay. They were, I think my initial last name was the Silvers. There was a moment in the pilot we renamed them the Goodmans, and we were like, that's a cool name, the Goodmans. We were just trying to figure out the last name of this family. So
I think you know, if you went with the Goodmans, people might have, you know, started thinking about John Goodman, Roseanne,
right.
you know, and
That's exactly what I thought.
Yeah, we had like a list of last names, and so there was another show being made simultaneously called Surviving Jack, and that was about a kid in the 90s. It was a Fox show, and his dad was like a doctor and really tough, and there was like Murray-like qualities to it. So when I heard that there was another kind of Wonder Years-y type show with the doctor, I changed it. And my dad also worked in my grandfather's furniture store. So that's why I picked that. My grandfather owned the furniture store, not my dad. So, but my dad did work there. So it was like, I was bending the truth a little bit, but there was like elements of reality to it. But had it been full on the Goldbergs, I would have made him a doctor. I think
I was
because
thinking
so many
that you
great
were
stories.
trying to make it more relatable to a normal everyday family.
It wasn't, see, but that was never the reason. Like people, I think, assume it's because if you're a doctor, that's not relatable. But I feel like there was nothing relatable about my family anyway. So
Right.
like it
I
never
know
fully.
you grew up in a mansion, pretty much.
Yes, we grew up in a giant, like the Silver Spoons house.
Right.
Worth saying, like, you know, it's all about your location. And I think my dad, I mean, I could go down this rabbit hole of like my parents' financial decisions.
Right.
But like, you know, they could have owned modest house on the main line. Like it'd be like, would you rather own a modest house in Bel Air or Beverly Hills, or like a giant monstrosity in like Van Nuys next to where they shoot X-rated movies? Like,
Yeah.
so they went for like quantity and not quality per se, which was definitely a thing in my family. Like the more bigger portion of food you got at your restaurant, the better the restaurant was, even if you hate the food.
Right.
It's like a Woody Allen joke. So
something that I've always
Dinner
wondered.
with Goldbergs.
Yep, that episode is all 100% fact. Yeah, I mean, a lot of things that bum me out ultimately is I wrote a sequel to that and broke out the whole thing called Flying with the Goldbergs.
Yeah, and they turned it into Airplane.
I think we were all on the same page that it was going to be Flying with the Goldbergs. You know, some stuff behind the scenes happened, and they wanted to do their own thing. I mean, I had such problems conceptually with their Airplane episode. Number one, like a story about Murray being afraid to fly is just the opposite of my dad, because his whole thing was like, if the plane crashes, great, I get to take a nap. I don't care.
I remember an episode, I think it was in the first season, where Murray, you said he just would say things that he was in a plane crash.
Yeah.
He worked
two of them. He said he was in 2 plane crashes, and I think it's true.
And
I think it's actually true.
He fixed Barry's radio, and he said, "Where did you learn to do that? In the Army?" He's like,
Right.
"What? You're in the Army?"
Yeah.
He's like,
that was my dad. It was like you get these weird things that would just kind of leak out, and then my mom would roll her eyes like, "Oh, this story again." It's like, what are you talking? I've never heard the story.
Yeah. And Erica said, "You used to work with Lou Reed?"
Yeah. Yeah.
He's like,
yeah. My dad.
The whole thing.
That was so true and real of my dad, and like, so to do a story where he's like taking pills and passing out in the bathroom of an airplane was tough. Just because, I thought there was so much great. I mean, the flying with my family was so hellacious, just like going to dinner with them. My mom would, at the time, if you were like under 12, you got to fly for free. So my mom kept
made you 12 for the next 16 years of your life.
She would literally forge our birth certificates. So we have we still have fake birth certificates. Like all those kind of stories of like, my parents were at their worst at dinner and flying. So it pains me that I never got to do that episode, because I know people would be like, oh, that's my favorite one, like the flying. Such a bummer.
How did Eric's opinion change as the series progressed?
Eric?
Yeah, because originally, as I understand it, he didn't want his character on the show, which is why we have Erica.
So it's interesting that, I don't know, it's interesting that is kind of like out there as a thing, because it's not really true. And again, like the way the show went down was so bizarre, but like, so initially they weren't the Goldbergs, right? I wrote it for Fox. It was just like a family kind of like mine, but it's what you do when you make a TV show. It's like, Seinfeld knew a Kramer, like,
right.
But it's not like he showed footage of Kramer at the end of the show, of the real Kramer. So I added a sister just because it wasn't my family. And I thought story-wise, it'd be good to have a sister character. Variety. And then when it went to ABC and we shot it, it was, again, it's the Goodmans, it's not the Goldbergs. And then after the fact, after they watched the pilot, they're like, we want your home videos. We want the Goldbergs. Like, that's when it all happened. So Eric was more disappointed, actually, that he wasn't really part of it.
Okay.
I think he said, maybe someone asked him in an interview, he's like, oh, I'm fine with it because I'm not going to be embarrassed, which is true. But of everyone, he cares the least. Like, if there was any story I wanted to do, he would have been like, I don't care, do it. So I would have never gotten a call from him upset that I embarrassed him. He just doesn't really care that way.
Okay.
And I'm bummed he's not a character. Like, as much as I love Haley and I love Erica, like my brother, he is such a character. Like, he would have been a great addition. It would have been a House of Boys, though.
Is he also a doctor?
He's also a doctor, and he's Barry, like the whole karate thing was my brother. That would have been Eric. Like,
okay.
So so yeah, he was always kind of just like felt bummed, I think, that we're all like getting videos shown or, whatever, and he wasn't part of it. I felt it kind of felt bad about it. But it just, again, it all changed so much. But this narrative of like is cool and all, that he was like, oh, he didn't want it, but it's just not really fully what happened. And then after the fact, I think when Barry really got embarrassed, he was like, oh, well, maybe it's for the best that I'm not part of it in that way. But I think he would have definitely loved it.
Did the fame ever? I'm sorry. Did the fame ever get to you? Like,
did the what?
The fame ever get to you? Like,
what do you mean exactly? Like, what kind of fame? I don't think I got any fame, really. I mean,
you're a household name because of the Goldbergs, obviously. I worked on a TV show when I was younger, when we were still filming stuff here at Universal Studios, and it was called Sequest.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
and I was just a recurring extra, right? Lieutenant Loeb, and I knew from what I was looking at, and these guys weren't very famous. I had like the DeLuise brothers there.
Was that Jonathan Brandis on Sequest?
Jonathan Brandis, right. Yeah, he was my age, and we became friends. And I'm sorry to speak ill of the dead, but a little bit of a prick. But
okay.
I have to edit that.
I knew from that day. When we get there at 8 o'clock in the morning, there'd be people lining up to try to get to Jonathan Brandis and all these. I had Michael Ironsides and
I think I was
Roy
so
Schneider.
I think I was so insulated. Like, the reality is that we did so many episodes and it all came from my brain. And then there was a spinoff or Imaginary Mary or other shows. And I was overextended so much that if I wasn't chained to my desk writing, then all the spinning plates would fall apart and we'd have nothing to shoot and Sony would hemorrhage millions and millions of dollars. So really,
you had a lot more pressure.
It was just me just constantly trying to write and edit, and I couldn't stop. So if anything drove me insane, it was that I was a prisoner. I felt like a prisoner, that just on this kind of like treadmill that was like slowly kind of like eating away at sapping the life out of me. But so the fame, I never get recognized. I'm a writer. I don't know.
That's what I liked about that. I knew I never wanted to be recognized. I wouldn't mind if someone wanted to look me up or whatever, and they saw what I did, but I don't want to go into a restaurant or and be berated like they were. And that was just the beginning of the day at 8 o'clock in the morning. People are doing that.
I also think with family shows, when they're around, people love them. And then when they end, they fade away pretty quickly. And people kind of forget, you don't really hear much about the middle, even Modern Family, whereas something like Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Office, they have this weird staying power of becoming memes and community. There's just certain family shows, I think, have their time and then that's it. So yeah, now that it's gone, it's just not, I don't even really, I think, I don't think anyone's really kind of still hardcore about it. Maybe.
You always reuse the same clip every time the Goldbergs left the house.
Right. Yes.
Why does the car run the stop sign?
Okay. So that was so we had an exterior of the car, I think it might even be from the pilot when we were allowed to go outside. And for whatever reason, they ran the stop sign. That was the footage that I had. They never stopped. And because we couldn't afford to go outside, I had to repurpose that shot in another episode just to save the money. And I got a note saying, do you have a different take? They run the stop sign and that's not cool. And I was like, no, I got this note on the pilot as well or whatever. We only have this one shot. And then I put it in another episode and I said to the writers, I wonder if I'm going to get the note again about the stop sign. I kept getting this weird network note, can they stop at the stop sign? I'm like, they didn't do it. So no, they can't.
But so then you got to make an episode about it.
Yeah, I kept getting this note over and over, and the more that I got the note, the more I used the clip, just because I thought it was funny that they would give the same note and not remember. They wouldn't remember giving the note before. So it was as if they were giving it for the first time. And then it became a thing. Then it was like, oh, now we have to use it over and over. And then, of course, I did a whole episode. In my brain, I started to think, okay, we're going to eventually do an episode where they get in a car accident.
That was great.
Yeah. Yep. And by the way, that, again, a true story, that there was a stop sign right at the top of our street. And my mom ended up going to like the town, Jenkintown City Hall, and doing a whole presentation about, I think it was to put in a stop sign, maybe. Yeah, so I did that episode.
And then someone blew the stop sign and wrecked your car again.
Wrecked the car. Yeah. So funny.
I think everybody has a story of when they were learning to drive.
Yep, for sure. And like, I did that as the first story for Barry, like right out the gate, because I just thought it's so universal, and like everyone has that driving story.
I mean, I had my whole family in the car when I was
learning to driving.
Yeah.
My sister and my mom was in the back seat.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, it was not having Eric on the show was such a bummer because he was always crashing cars. It would have been such a fun character thing. And he ended up like, I did that episode where the car went off the mountain, which is a total true
that
story.
was Eric that did that, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it's like, I wish I knew what it was going to be when I started. Like, I maybe would have been more prepared for like the whole experience, but again, it wasn't my intention. So it was all kind of taking me by surprise as it was happening.
If you could assign a Muppet to like each one of your family, who would be who?
It's a great question. It's
great
the best question ever. So I guess Beverly would obviously be Miss Piggy because it's all about her. Let's see. Adam would be Scooter. I think that's pretty obvious, right? And Barry's Animal. I think there's like a lot of just that constantly melting down.
Oh yeah.
Murray would be Sweetums. I think that's a pretty good dead-on comparison. Big, giant, kind of like gruff. Erica would be. That's a tough one. Who else am I missing?
Why don't we say who Eric would be?
That's a tough one. Like, Eric, my brother.
Yeah.
Eric, my brother, as a Muppet would be like probably Sam the Eagle, because my brother's like real OCD and I like that's a good question. And then Pops,
one of the guys upstairs.
Stapper.
Yeah. But they're so grumpy. Pops is so good.
I know, he's so nice. Like maybe your Pops.
Oh yeah, Pop for sure. Ben.
Pop would be both of them.
Totally. Yeah, like there is an old kind of Muppet, the guy that ran the Happiness Hotel.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. That's fun though. Yeah, I like part of the best part of doing the new show was coming up with the new characters. Like it's so like just watching that whole process is so fun, and there needs to be like new Muppets. That's something they really do. Because like the new Muppets, like from Muppets Tonight, was like Pepe the Prawn and King Prawn and like Sal and Johnny, and they came up with some great Muppets, but that now was probably 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's been too long. Need some good new Muppets for sure. Yeah.
Now is Fraggle Rock separate from the Muppets?
Yes.
Especially like if you were to reboot the Fraggle Rock series, is that something you could do?
Well, so the Henson Company sold the Muppets, all of it, all the Muppets, and they retained Dark Crystal Labyrinth and Fraggle Rock. They rebooted Fraggle Rock for Apple TV. So it has been rebooted, and it's a lot of this original performers. I think it was nominated for some Emmys our year. So apparently it's well, I've watched it. It's great. I watched the first season. I think there's a second season. It's great, and I love Fraggle Rock. In a lot of ways, Fraggle Rock was more in my world than Muppets was, because that was like I was more of a Fraggle age. But yeah, Henson. Look, the reason Fraggles is out there is because Henson owns it, and it's not like locked down by Disney.
Right.
You know. So yeah, and they did Dark Crystal as well for Netflix. And I believe they're doing some kind of Labyrinth thing too.
I've heard they're doing a Labyrinth reboot.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there should be a Fraggle movie. Would be really cool.
Of the Fraggle.
Yeah.
We were the same age, so I got you on that.
Yeah. Fraggles were the best.
Well, I think we'll wrap this up. Does anybody have any more questions for Adam?
So many, but
we covered it all. I wanted to thank the three of you for putting in so much time into the various Facebook pages and keeping it positive, and picking apart like the episodes, and you get a full-time job you guys did. It was amazing. It's amazing.
A lot of
Getting
fun,
rid of crazy people that wanted to kick you out of the group.
Oh, I forgot that happened. That's right.
Yeah.
I almost got kicked out of the Goldberg's group.
Yeah.
That would have been.
I wake up one day and all of a sudden my Goldberg's group has 2,500 more people than it did when I went to bed. I'm like, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
because this guy went crazy and was like, oh, he shouldn't be in the group. I'm kicking him out. I'm like, no, you're not.
To tell you,
it's his
Naked
show.
Rob
I'm gonna kick him out of the group.
Our group, he did. And
all of a sudden, my group's doubled overnight.
Yeah,
but he kind of calmed down a little bit.
Yeah,
well, we kind of did a hostile takeover.
In a lot of ways, the groups kept me sane, in the later years, because I don't know, I felt like I was screaming into nothingness, but
no, you weren't.
It was interesting to watch the fan reaction, which was always in line with how I felt. Even even dating back to when I was working on the show, if there was an episode that didn't work out the way I wanted it to, fans, they're dead on. They know when it's working, they know when it's not working. And I was always on the ABC Facebook page and and both of your fan pages interacting, because the fan, look, I wrote the movie Fanboys, so I'm a fan, and I know that opinion matters. So I seeing what the fans were responding to, not responding to, definitely colored what the show, how the direction of the show, without a doubt. And then after I was gone, the new team they don't even have social media. So I think they were just kind of, doing their thing. But I definitely if someone thought a character was too mean, that was something where I would really take that to heart, because I wanted the show to be joyful and fun and feel wish fulfillment and be relatable. And I would sometimes write a true story and people be like, that was too far. So it was always me kind of checking in with the fans, and I loved it. And yeah,
I can't speak for the other group, but I remember when you first became active in my group, and that having to convince the rest of the members in the group that you were who you say you were, and not some random person pretending to be you.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Right. And I think when you first joined our group, when Lynn was alive.
Right. Yep.
She thought you were just some random person. I think she actually declined your request a couple times.
Yeah.
Until she verified it was you.
Yeah.
And then she was so excited. She messaged me and she's like, oh my gosh, the real Adam Goldberg is joining our group. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. I think I would, again, if it wasn't the Goldberg show, I would have just lurked from afar. But, it would be interesting. A lot of times it'd be someone be like, I know the real people and this isn't true. And then I'd be like, who are you? I don't know you. And then comment would be deleted. So
a great thing I would say about the interaction with your show was that we actually got to befriend the real people.
Yeah.
Like I'm friends with Johnny
and Beverly and
I mean,
and that made people
your mom things wrong a little bit because when we happy birthday, stupid Matt Bradley, and like Barry would never say that. I'm like, okay, well,
I mean, it gives you a taste of what I dealt with every day. My mom on the boards complaining, but yeah, I mean, I mean, look, it was like fun for me, in a way to be like a gatekeeper, because you never get to be a gatekeeper of Star Wars, like
I know, yeah.
You know, but I created the thing and it was my world and my life. So I did enjoy, just, you know, giving context, having people feel like it was interactive, having people meet the real people. That was all real cool. Stressful, but cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Adam. This has been so much fun.
Thank you guys. And again, thank you for keeping my mad ramblings alive. And I hope there's more Muppets, and I'm on the cusp of getting a pitching and hopefully getting a new show that's kind of like a dream project. So there might be a really big one I think all three of you will be really excited about. It's a big property.
Oh, I can't wait to hear.
Is it Muppets related?
It is. I'm still working on Muppet stuff, but it's not Muppets related. It's more sci-fi.
Okay.
So,
well, just to let you know that I was one of the fanboys that was in line in 1999, just like Linus and all them Windows and Hutch. So,
and then you left, and you were like,
another conversation.
You left, and you were like, did that suck? I'm not sure. I think that might have sucked.
You know what? I went back and saw it 15 times in the theater. I'm not joking about that.
That's a lot. That's a lot for episode for Phantom Menace.
Right by Pleasure Island, so I got to, had that experience.
I was going to ask about Garbage Pail Kids, but it's already been an hour and a half. So
it's been an hour and a half. I have to go. I'm actually hopping on a Zoom with Bill. Right now we're working on a Muppet type thing, but thank you all again. Like from the bottom of my heart, I so appreciated on what you guys do and how you keep everything alive.
Well, thank you so much, Adam. It's been a pleasure.
For us.
Bye, guys.
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah.